Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to talk to you about critical options. And looking at that, and looking at some of the definitions of options: decision, self-determination, choice, preference, desire. I want to share something with you that's relative to critical options, because we all have them in our lives. And I want to ask you a question. What is the focus of your life? What is the focus of your life? In life, you have a critical option. You can take a stand in your life, or you can follow the crowd. See, people who follow the crowd, their lives are not focused. They're not immersed in anything. People who take a stand, they're living a life that has some power, a life of achievement, a life that has some meaning. People that are taking a stand in life, they are consciously involved in a process to design a life of substance. People who are following the crowd, these are people that they're just doing what everybody else is doing. So that's a crowded road over there. They're following the followers. I want to talk to you about taking a stand with your life. And what are some of the things we can do that will enable us to give our lives up in a way that has some purpose and meaning, that can be real for us, that can give us a sense of fulfillment, of joy and happiness and peace of mind. See, most people are bored with life. Most people feel that life isn't worth the hassle, that life is just wearing me out. It's boring, it's monotonous. I have nothing to look forward to. Here we go again, another Monday morning. TGIF Day, thank God it's Friday. Here we go again, oh boy. You see what the man meant about many people die at age 25 and don't get buried until they're 65? Doing the same thing the same way every day, looking at these faces, just walking around. I mean, you got to be aware of these faces. They affect you, you know. Try to stay around pleasant faces, and if you have an unpleasant face, try and smile more. It's good for your health. And there's another dividend: you look better too. So, looking for a way in which we can begin to give our lives some special power. Number one, commit yourself to giving your best at all times. Now, that's not easy. See, most people, and particularly those who are working in corporations, they're finding now they've got to change their behavior. We're now involved in a world economy. We will never do business the way in which we've done business in the past. We will never be able to, in the American workplace, do just enough to get by. Now the standards have been raised. Quality and productivity has been increased because of the competition. And so now average performance will not be enough. This is a new day. Competition is fierce. So people who've been locked into a behavior pattern are working just hard enough to keep from getting fired. They're being laid off, are forced into early retirement. It's a new game now. So now more than ever, it's about increased productivity. Now more than ever, it's about superior quality service. Now more than ever, it's about creating a positive atmosphere in the workplace, and people that have that competitive age, people that are hungry to make it. See, you got to be hungry now. You can't just casually walk around, well, I'll get to it later on. Oh, no, this is a new day right now. Committing yourself to give your best at all times, regardless of the competition to do otherwise, or the influences of negative people that will tell you, hey, look here, don't push yourself too much. Now's the time to push yourself, to always get in the habit of giving the best that you have to share. Thinking about a situation where I had to give a lecture out in Los Angeles, California for Xerox Corporation. Well, part of what I do when I My profession is doing corporate training. My passion is doing training with kids. So when I go someplace, I always try and arrange for a community group to have a group of young people together for me to work with them on a volunteer basis in the evening. So I decided to go into an area of Los Angeles to talk with someone about doing that, and they suggested that I come to speak at a community center right outside Los Angeles at Carson Community Center. And because of the gangs in Los Angeles, one of the young men that was coming there to organize it, and his mother, he had a twin brother, and he took an interest in me because I have a twin. And his twin brother was the victim of a gang ritual. They brought in a new member in the gang, and he had to prove that he was really with them and committed. And his job was just to select anybody at random and kill them. And he did that as this young guy was coming out of a store. So they told me, Mr. Brown, would you come over and talk to the teenagers here? There's a lot of depression and despair and hopelessness and people feeling powerless about the gangs. And bring with you some handouts and materials so you can do a workshop. And parents will be involved too. Would you be willing to do that? I said, well, I'm doing a full-day seminar, and I'm usually just physically exhausted afterwards. How many people you say you're going to have? We guarantee at least 400 to 500 people there. I said, okay, I will come there and work with them and take them through this intensive. It's called Project Respect, how to create a shift in the community, how to get young people engaged in a process of creating positive peer pressure rather than buying into the negative peer pressure. Instruments and techniques of how we can provide ongoing coaching for young people to begin to change how they see themselves and their values and how to resist negative peer pressure. So I came there after working in a seminar, totally exhausted, in that Los Angeles traffic. It took over an hour to get there. Got there, they only had 7 people. I had an attitude. Did you have me come all the way from Los Angeles after working all day just to talk to 7 people? You told me over 400 people were going to be here. Where are the parents? Only one parent here. My time is valuable. I've got all this material that we've copied to do a workshop. And so I went on and talked to those young people that were in the room, the 7 that were there, and I just gave them a little speech. And then I left. Went back to the hotel. That night around 3:30 in the morning, the phone rang. The minister that invited me called me and said, Mr. Brown, I've got to ask for your attention for a moment. I said, what is it? Kenyatta, one of the young men who was there, wanted to talk to you. He was the brother of the guy that was killed. He'd like to talk to you. He's been here for over an hour, and I told him, please don't call you. But he insisted. Would you please talk to him for a moment? I said, yes, put him on the phone. Kenyatta, what can I do for you? He said, Mr. Brown, I listened to your tapes for a long time. I've grown to love you and admire you. Among the things that I heard on your tapes that you said you must deal with circumstances such as you find them. You came in this evening, and I admit, no, we did not have the numbers that you asked for. No, we did not deliver as we had promised we would. But we were looking for you, the motivator, to give us some hope. We were depressed, and we don't know what to do. We were looking for some direction. And you were so caught up in pouting with your ego because we didn't have the place full. You didn't give us your best. I said, excuse me, I was laying in bed. I sit up then. Wait a minute here. Now, see, part of what won't let us grow in life is, number one, we identify when we get feedback. We start taking it personal. Number two, we start to justify. So I became defensive, and I said, wait a minute. I worked all day. I didn't charge y'all a quarter for this. I went carpet material. I came over there. I was there to give a training for the people, and all y'all had to do was bring people there. If you don't do it for me, for the next speaker that you have, at least provide an audience for him to work with. He said, are you through, sir? I said, yes. Mr. Brown, you said you must deal with circumstances such as you find them. We went round and round for about 45 minutes. because my ego on the line. I can't let this young boy out debate me. He was not intimidated. I used all the verbal gymnastics and examples I could. He would not budge. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. Give me a break. And he said, it takes a big man to say he's sorry. That night, after I finished that young man, I prayed. I stayed on the floor by the bed. I said, Lord, if you ever give me a chance to speak again, I don't care if it's one person in the audience, I'm going to wear that one out. I learned my lesson. I want to read something to you called The Builder that kind of touched me. Because when you start looking at giving your best at all times, that's not easy. But when you are committing yourself to doing something, those are the standards that you set for yourself because that's who you are. If you're working on a job where you're miserable, they're not paying you what you're worth. You don't like the work, you don't like the people, and you're dissatisfied. If you have decided to continue to take a paycheck, you owe it to yourself to give it your best effort. If you get in the habit of being mediocre or doing just enough to get by, you're not hurting anybody but you. You're cheating you. The builder. There was a man who was an efficient builder. He had worked for years in a large company and had reached the age of retirement. His employer asked him to build one more house. It was to be his last commission. The builder took the job, but his heart was not involved. He used inferior materials. Timber was poor, and he failed to see the many things that should have been clear to him had he shown even his normal interest in his work. When the house was eventually finished, his employer came to him and said, "The house is yours. Here's the key. It's a present from me." The builder immediately regretted that he had not used the best materials and engaged the most capable workers. If only he had known that the house was for him. Whoa. If he had made a commitment with his life, with his craft, that I'm going to give my best at all times, even if this is my last job, I'm going to give it my best shot because that expresses who I am, he would have been more appreciative of that gift. Would you imagine that? I think that makes a very good point. The next thing is, live each day with integrity. Don't try and get over in life. Don't try and cheat. See, a lot of people like to try and cheat. I was with a friend of mine, and we went into a service station to get some gas. They gave me back too much change. I discovered it down the road, and I was turning around going back. Guy said, "You're a fool. Hey, man, what when they don't give people enough change? You think they flag the people down?" I said, "I'm not responsible for them. I'm responsible for me." I went back and I told the guy, "Excuse me, sir, you gave me a $20 bill too much." I gave it to the guy just took it and walked away, didn't say thank you. The guy in the car laughed, said, "I told you, you fool." I'd have kept that. I said, I'm not responsible for his attitude. I don't care, knowing that he would not say thank you, I would still give it back to him. Because my image of myself says, hey, you don't take something that doesn't belong to you. That's the way my mother raised me. Don't try and cheat. Say, well, you know, this little bit won't count. Everything counts. A friend of mine was on welfare after going through a bad experience. Someone, I think she and her husband became ill. They couldn't work for a while, and they went on welfare. After they both became physically well, he said, look here. We don't ever have to go back to work. We're making more money on welfare than we made when we were working. with all the Medicaid benefits and all of the food stamps and everything. She said no. She said, we are not going to accept the checks anymore. He said, I'm not going to work. Now, you can go to work if you want to. She went down to the welfare department and said, don't send any more checks to my house. Lady said, excuse me? She said, now, I've been working here 25 years. No one has ever come in here and said, don't send any more checks here. Are you sure you're all right? Yes, I am. And she went home and told her husband, don't look for any more checks because I told them to cut the check off. Now we've got to find something to do. And they started a paper route and got over 1,500 customers and were making money hand over fist in a spirit of dignity and achievement, not ripping anybody off. That was a critical choice. She could have very easily said, well, everybody else is doing it, why don't I do it? But she decided not to follow the crowd. I like what Whitaker said, what you think about me is none of my spiritual business. So when you are keeping integrity with yourself, you know that's going to bring you under a lot of pressure. The next thing is, don't try to cut a bargain with life. Life is not Donald Trump. Life will not give you any special deals because you maintain a sense of integrity. Anybody ever try to cut a deal? Raise your hand, please, if you know what I'm talking about. If you try to cut a deal, there are no deals. There are no deals. You've got to do what you do because, not with any ulterior motives, that you're going to get some special benefit or some special treatment in the universe. No. Doesn't mean that somebody might not steal your car while you're trying to do some good for somebody. No, there won't be any special light around your car. They will take your car too. All the good people. You're going to go too. You've got to do what you do because that expresses who you are and for no other reason. They might not have a banquet to recognize you or give you a special little plaque and dedicate a day in your name. No. Do what you do because that's you. The next thing is dedicate your life to something. Dedicate your life to a cause larger than yourself. See, if you dedicate your life to a cause larger than yourself, you're not following in the crowd. See, if your life is not dedicated to something of value, and I like what Howard Thurman said, who was one of the mentors to Dr. Benjamin Mays, who was a mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, the quality of life is often determined by that to which the individual is dedicated. If the dedication of the life is vague and diffuse, the quality is apt to be poor and weak. There is much to be said for the intensity of life. See, most people are not intense about living. Most people are very casual about life. They haven't found anything to become intense about. So when you dedicate your life, you don't care anything about the odds. Somebody say when the dream is big enough, the odds don't matter. See, when you dedicate your life, you bring on a special power. There's a power in you that people, circumstances, events, and I'm not talking about the physical you, I'm talking about the real you, the indestructible, invincible, perfect essence of who you really are, that can bring a government to its knees, that can change the course of history. When you dedicate your life like a Nelson Mandela, who has decided to sacrifice his freedom, all he has to do is say whatever the government wants him to say, and they'll let him go free. And he can go to a foreign nation and say, I just said that because I've been in prison for over 20 years. And nobody would say, well, Nelson, you sold out. No one would say that. They would say, wait a minute. Nelson, you gave over 20 years of your life. What more can we ask of you? It's okay. But because of his integrity with himself, and he's dedicated his life to break the back of apartheid and free his people, It was Benjamin Disraeli. He says, nothing can resist the will of a people that will stake even their existence on the extent of their purpose for good. That when you dedicate your life to something, you bring on some powers in the universe that works through you to bring about changes that you would never ever know unless you have dedicated yourself. So I say to you that there is a Mother Teresa in you. There's some work for you to do. I say to you that there is a Nelson Mandela in you. That kind of commitment, that kind of spirit, that kind of personal power, that kind of vision of allowing yourself to be used by life is in you. That all of us came here to do something, to make a difference. And in a historical context, the world will never be the same again because you came this way. Anytime somebody asks me how I'm doing, I say I'm doing better than good and better than most, and sometimes even better than that. Let me tell you where I got that from. When I was involved in broadcasting, I used to have the first hour of my show as a disc jockey in Columbus, Ohio. I used to give an inspirational program. And there was a lady that used to call me by the name of Audrey Pelmore. Audrey worked at University Hospital. Audrey was an enthusiastic personality that everybody liked her. I mean, she had a radiant smile, and she was just one of those people. You ever meet one of those people that everybody just liked them? She was one of those kind of folks. Audrey became stricken with muscular sclerosis at a very young age. And after a while, she became confined to a wheelchair. She had children, and because of her physical deterioration, she could no longer take care of her children, and she had to be confined to a nursing home, Alum Creek Nursing Home on Nelson Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. Audrey used to have the nurses at the hospital call the radio station and put the phone to her ear. And she would ask for a certain request, and I would ask her to say a few words to the listening audience. One day, while I was doing my program, I got a call from one of my regular callers, a young lady by the name of Shirley. Shirley, on this particular day, there was a sound in her voice, and I detected that something was wrong. And she said to me, "It's nice talking to you, Les. I'll be seeing you." And I said, wait, hold a minute, Shirley. There's something wrong. She says, "There's nothing wrong." I said, "There is, Shirley. I know you. Come on, Shirley, what's wrong?" Well, Shirley had been diagnosed as having cancer of the breast. And they told her that she had a 60-40 chance of not surviving. During the time that she had had her medical examination, her husband had become distant. Through the pressure of losing her husband and the illness, she just felt, hey, I'm not the kind of person that can handle suffering, and I'd rather just end it quickly. She was at a critical point in her life, and this is the option that she decided to take. I did everything I could to discourage her, to give her a reason to want to go on living. I was trying to find something that she can hold on to that would give her a sense of hope, some thread. And I used scripture and everything. And one of my fallback positions, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And she didn't budge. That did not work. And I was out of my arsenal of what can I do to hold on to her, to get her to change her mind, to create a shift in her thinking. And the thought came to me. I said, "Shirley, could you wait until tomorrow?" She waited for a long time before she answered. She said, "Why tomorrow?" I said, "Because if you wait until tomorrow, I'd like to take you by to see Audrey Pelmore. You remember Audrey that I talk about all the time on the air?" She said, "Yes, I like her. I would like to meet her." And she met me at the Alum Creek Nursing Home, and When we got there, we were both very silent because I'd made a pact with her that if this was not enough to discourage her from taking her life, then I would honor our agreement and I would just release her. And I was going to talk to somebody else to try and get her. I didn't tell her that. As we walked down the hall, I did not know exactly what to expect. I had not seen Audrey for some time. When we walked in the room, there Audrey was, all twisted, physically deformed. She had no voluntary use of her arms. She couldn't even fan a fly out of her face. She couldn't get up and move around. And we had to get close to her because her vision was blurred and she can't speak very loudly. And her hearing was somewhat impaired. And as we drew closer to her, I said, Audrey, this is Les. And I have a friend with me named Shirley. How you doing, Audrey? And with what strength she had, she said, better than good and better than most. Shirley, I know as the tears began to form in her eyes, I know she had to be thinking that here this woman is. She's been on her back, a prisoner in her body for 17 years. She can't turn herself. She can't get up and go to the restroom. She said to me, Les, I'd love to be able to get up and walk out of here with you. I'd love to be able to take care of my children, to be a mother to them, to see them graduate from high school. She said, Les, I can't do that. And I'm doing better than good and better than most. Shirley had to be saying within herself, what right do I have to feel sorry for myself? What right do I have to cry out, why me? And she decided and left there with a commitment that she wanted to live with whatever time that she had left, that she had no right to cut the time off. She had no right to do that. And she left there with a new determination, a new spirit about her. And that's something about what we have, that you have. There are sometimes your options are frozen. See, Audrey can't walk out of a hospital. She did not have the capacity to take care of her children, but she had a freedom of spirit. And that's what we have, wherever we are, with whatever hand that life has dealt us. We have the freedom of spirit. We can go through life whining and weeping, or we can have the kind of spirit that people will say, hey, there's a blessing to be around that person. The staff at the hospital used to go in her room to be encouraged and inspired by her because she didn't feel sorry for herself. And she didn't go through life blaming everybody. I'm reminded of a young guy who was on a bus, a little young fellow, and some kids were picking at him, some bigger guys, and they kept on thumping him on the head and hiding their hands. And so he got tired of them doing that, and he stood up so he would not be around them, out of their reach. And they took him and said, sit down. They set him down. And he stood back up and said, I don't want to sit down. They said, sit down. Didn't we tell you? And they pushed him back down. I don't want to sit down. They said, sit down. And they held him down. And he looked at him. He said, you might hold me down, but I'm standing up inside myself. And what we have got to do is know that there's something about you, there's something about us, there's a power in you that regardless of what happens to you, you can stand up inside of yourself. I think that's what the poet meant when he says, out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods there may be for my unconquerable soul. You have an unconquerable soul. Something that George Bernard Shaw said that I think has some power for us. I'd like to share it with you. He said, this is the true joy in life. And one of the things that he said, and I love when he talked about man and Superman, he said that we should establish a tribunal where people would be required to come once a year to give a reason why they should be permitted to go on living for the next year. Can you imagine all the do-nothings? Hopping from one foot to the other, trying to give some justification why they should be allowed to live for the next year? Well, what do? I drink a little bit. What are you contributing to life? I go to work every day. No, are you making a difference in the universe? Why should we allow you to continue to occupy this space? Can I come back to that one? This is the true joy in life. The being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. Being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion, George Bernard Shaw goes on to say, that my life belongs to the whole community. And as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle for me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got a hold of for the moment. And I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. This is Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy, Leslie Calvin Brown, saying it's been a plum-pleasing pleasure as well as a privilege. Thank y'all here. Thank you.
This is the end of Side A. Side B is already queued up for your listening.
All of us, at some time or another, have agonized over making a decision. Some decisions are major decisions. And also there are a lot of small decisions that we don't make, that they tax our minds, they drain our energy, they create a lot of anxiety and nervousness and mental torment because we don't take care of it. We decide not to decide, which is a decision. Deciding to decide, to act, is a major, major challenge for all of us at different points in different areas of our lives. And there are things that happen to us along the way, experiences that we have that prevent us from working through the mental block of acting, of doing those things that we know we ought to do. And so what I want you to think about is, what is there that you know you need to do, that you want to do this, but for some reason or another, you've been holding back. For some reason or another, you just have not been able to gather your nerves or be able to work through the procrastinating or putting it off or justifying or blaming. Some reason or another, you just haven't done it. And you know you ought to do this. You really want to do this, but you don't know why you haven't done it. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand, please. Okay, then I've got company here this evening. I'm not talking to myself. Now, first of all, we know that this is not easy. Because in order to begin to reinvent your life, you've got to make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort. That you really have got to put all of yourself into it. It's very challenging to act, to do those things. There are times when you're looking at it and you say, I know I need to do this, but I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it. I know I need to do it, yet leave me alone. No, I don't want to do it. So what do we do? What are those things that cause us to do like that? I think that among the things that prevent us from acting is the fear of failure. And if you've already failed, you don't want to fail again. The pain of that, the disappointment, the fear of loss is another thing. Because many times when we do those things that we know we need to do, we feel that we might lose somebody that we love very much and care about. We don't want to hurt anybody. Many of us don't act because we want other people's approval. We want everybody to like us and to accept us. And that's not possible. Many of us don't do the things that we want to do and don't act because of lack of self-confidence. We don't believe enough in ourselves. I have a friend who's been working on a job where she's miserable, talented, want to go to another place that she can do what she wants to do and make the kind of money that she would like to make, and had some offers. But because of her fear and her lack of self-confidence of things might not work out, she won't take a chance on herself. So there she is spending 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and she's miserable. She hates to go to work. They're not paying her what she's worth. She knows it, but yet and still, she won't do that which she knows she must do, and it's wearing her out. There are a lot of people that their jobs are making them sick because they won't act. You check out the absenteeism and the people that are depressed. You see them coming to work angry. How you doing? I don't know. Just leave me alone. It's not even 9 o'clock yet. You're talking about good morning. There are days you go to work, you want to just keep driving past the job. You don't want to stop because it's not in sync with who you are. But you haven't acted. Have another friend. This guy's brilliant. He's a business consultant. He helped a lot of people get their business started, and people come to him because they know he's knowledgeable. But this guy won't start his own business. Now, he's very smart. He can do it. Everybody believes in him except him. And he's so smart, he's talked himself out of it. Well, the numbers aren't right. So there are many reasons why we don't act. There are other things, though, that affect us. It's that not wanting to take personal responsibility. We want somebody else to do it. And many times we pick up our inability to do certain things from people that we love, people that we admire. We identify with them, and we live in the context of their ideas, their opinions, and their life patterns. We buy into it unconsciously. My mother is a pack rat. She keeps everything. She doesn't throw anything away. And I have unconsciously picked that up. Now, my mother never said, let me show you how to keep everything, Les, and just clutter things. I unconsciously picked that up, many times unconsciously. We try to honor the people we love by being like them. By the same token, I realized something about myself when I had some major decisions to make, and I found myself acting like my mother. See, my mother's the kind of person that when she has a problem with one of the other foster children that she adopted, she won't confront them. She will call me. Les, why don't you tell Linda to move? She's lazy. She won't go to work. She runs the street all day, and then she comes home and wants to sleep all day, and I think she's doing drugs. I said, but Mama, why don't you tell Linda that? I bought the house for you. I told you when she wanted to come home, don't let a grown person come there and take care of them. You let her in. Well, after all, she's my child. Mama, then you handle that. When I tell her to leave, she say, Mama say I can stay. Mama, can I stay? And you tell her yes, and then you call me and say, she's still here. Why worry me with this? So Mama hasn't developed the courage to act on that. Some people won't act until there's a crisis situation. When Linda started stealing from Mama and took her Social Security check to get some drugs, Mama got some courage to say, get out of here, and don't ever come back. But she wouldn't do it until then. And see, we don't have to wait until a crisis situation. I have a friend that has been having a challenge with losing weight. Both of us have been dealing with that challenge. And for the past 40 years, he's always seemed like weighed over 235 pounds. And so he said, man, I just can't lose weight. I'm big-boned. I said, Bud, I've never seen any fat skeletons. No, you need to act on your health. You can change this. You don't have to go to your grave fat. We're all digging early graves without teeth. We don't have to do this. They need to have a support group around M&M peanuts. You want a support group on something, and throw Snickers in there too. Bud and I can tell you about the help we need with that. So what happened with Bud, though, he became ill a few weeks ago. See, Bud in the last few weeks has lost more weight than he's ever lost, even when we were competing with each other, betting a lot of money. But what happened was, Bud became diabetic. He went into an insulin shock. He didn't know that he was diabetic. His blood sugar became high. And the doctor said to him, you are diabetic. You're going to have insulin shots every day. You're going to have to change your diet. And let me tell you what's going to happen if you don't do what we tell you to do. Number one, there's a possibility that you can become an amputee. Number two, you can go blind. Three, you can become impotent. Bud, say, help me. Like those guys with Paul, when Paul broke out of jail, those guys say, tell me what I must do to be saved. Bud wanted to be saved. I said, Bud, you want one of my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? No. I said, Bud, I can't believe you're eating vegetables, man. You're exercising. He said, that's right, and jogging in place too. Now, he had the ability to do it before, but there's some people, it takes that kind of crisis to bring them into reality in order for them to act in their own best interest. Some people have to hit rock bottom in order to rise. I don't know why. You want to begin to look out on your life and what you want for you. And I think that when we begin to focus in the area of what does it take for us to act, I think we can say events can inspire us to act, like that particular event in his life. Circumstances. A friend of mine, he wanted to do something and he just did not have the motivation and the drive and the confidence within himself. But his circumstances changed overnight through an acquisition of the company that he worked for. He lost his job. Through the inspiration of desperation, he had to act. See, life also are things that can inspire us to act. See, if we don't have the courage, and that's what it takes, courage. It takes guts to do that which you know you need to do. If you don't have the courage to act, life many times will move on you and make you act. Life will whoop your butt so bad. You will be so miserable, you will catch so much hell, you say, yes, I will do it. What do you want me to do? Take me. Friend of mine said, I can't stop smoking. I can't stop smoking. Doctor said, Sam Axelrod, you have emphysema. Sam never picked up another cigarette and said, look at those stupid people smoking. Sam, you did it for 35 years. How can you talk about people? Well, I was different. I'm trying to help them. They don't have to do the same thing I did. But be compassionate, Sam. Isn't it interesting how quickly we forget? So I'm saying that look at something in your life. It might be just writing a letter to somebody to say thank you. It might be just to apologize to somebody. I had a confrontation in the Penobscot building with a security guard there. He responded to me what I perceived as a negative way, and he and I engaged in an argument. I did not like the way I handled that. I avoided going through the front door for a long time because I didn't want to face him. Finally, I decided to act, and I went up to him and said, I want to apologize to you for the way in which I handled this argument we had the other day. I was wrong. I hope you accept my apology. He said, I do. And I said, thank you very much. I felt relieved. Now, when you decide to act, it's not always going to be like that. A friend of mine did some work for me. It was below par, to say the least. I knew that this guy was capable of doing better work. I knew that he also had a fragile ego. So I was trying to think of what is the most sensitive way in which I can share this information with him. Because I wanted him to do my work over. I was going to pay him for what he did, but I needed my work done right. But I was afraid that I would hurt his feelings. I was very, very meticulous in how I approached him. And I said, let me share this with you. You know I care about you, and that you're a very talented and gifted person. And you and I both know that what you have given me is not a true reflection of your talents and abilities. And I'm saying, let's go back in the studio and do this again. And he said to me, I'm going to forget you ever said that. I was wiped out. He never spoke to me again. Now, when you decide to act, you're going to have some people like that. We're no longer friends. I lost sleep over that, ladies and gentlemen. I said, I can't believe that. I remember sitting up one night looking at the phone. I said, I got to call him. He said, no. Then I said, no, forget that. I called, man, look here, we've been knowing each other too long to allow this to come between us. He said, don't call me anymore, and hung up. And then I wanted to think about what can I do to make it up to him, and then something came to me, Les, what do you have to prove? See, many things we don't do is because of the fact we want people to like us. There's some necessary losses in life. When you decide acting in your best interest, you're going to lose some friends. Everybody's not going to approve of you. There's some people that won't like you. Who do you think you are? You're arrogant. What do you think you can do? You think you can get away with that? You're selfish. Thanks, I got that. It's my life. And so what I'm saying to you is that as you begin to look out on your life, this is challenging. This is not easy, acting. So what are the things that we can begin to do to harness our will? Number one, you've got to bring it out and look at it. You've got to take the power out of it. You've got to expose it to the truth. And the truth is that it has no power over you. So write down something you want to act on, but for some reason that you've been holding back, and look at it. The next thing is, ask yourself the question, is it helping you to continue to put it off? If it's an asset for you to continue to procrastinate, then continue to do that. But if it's a liability for you, if it's causing you some mental and some emotional challenges, or perhaps a financial problem, look at that. Examine that for what it is. Next step, ask yourself, what's blocking you? What's preventing you from acting? Why don't you have the courage to handle that? Why won't you face that? What are you running away from? What kind of avoidance behavior are you engaged in? Next is, what is the worst thing that can happen when you take action? So I looked at that. And I said, what's the worst thing can happen when I tell him this? He can say, I don't like you. And he did. Now what happened? I experienced that. I looked at that. I saw that. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I didn't die. My feelings were hurt a little bit. I lost some sleep about it. And sometimes I think about it when I drive past his house. But I'm still here. It's uncomfortable. But it's okay. It doesn't bother me anymore. I've gotten used to it now. So what is the worst thing that can happen? I want you to visualize that, experience that, feel the nervousness and the discomfort. And the more you run it in your mind, the less power that it will have. Next is, how will you feel after taking this action? I felt a sense of personal achievement when I faced somebody that has been my mentor for years. And for years, there was something I wanted to tell him. And I didn't have the courage to tell him because it was always, I was the student, he was the teacher. It was always, I looked up to him and admired him and held him in high esteem. And I was always grateful and thankful for the impact that he had on my life. And I loved him so much. I didn't have the courage to say to him, please stop drinking so much. You're an alcoholic. You need help. I didn't have the courage. because I was afraid that he might not like me. I was afraid that he might be hurt and crushed, that we would no longer be friends. I didn't want to jeopardize what we had. I loved him a great deal, and I didn't know how this would affect our relationship. And I didn't even want him to know that I knew that he was an alcoholic. And so I was a coward. I was spineless. In the name of love, I did it to justify to myself to stop from helping somebody that I loved from dying. I said, I love him so much, I just can't tell him this. I don't even know how he would handle it, to know that I know that he's an alcoholic. And finally, after years, I developed the courage to face my teacher, my mentor who has molded me, who looks at me now and wanted to do what I'm doing now and did not do it. Came at a different time, and it wasn't time for what he brought. And he's living through me. And I had to face this man who's been like a father to me and say, I got to tell you something. You've got a problem. I love you very much. Please stop drinking. You're killing yourself. It's not just social. You do it every day. You need help. And whatever I can do to support you in that, I will. But please stop. And he looked at me, and I had no idea how he was going to handle that. And first there was like, I dare you. And we just looked at each other. And then I reached out to embrace him. And we've never, ever embraced men, macho. We never hugged before. I hugged him, and he just stood there with his arms straight. He couldn't raise his arms to hug me back. And he was shocked. And after he got over the initial shock, when he could bring himself to speak, to maintain his composure, because he could never afford to let me, his student, see him vulnerable or admit that I was right. He said, I'll be seeing you. And I said, yes, sir. Tell your wife I'll be by the house to see you all before I leave. And when he walked away, at first I was very depressed about it. And I said, well, maybe it wasn't my place to do this. And you know, when you act, you're going to have some second thoughts. And then I said, no. I did what I felt. I did it because I feel very strongly about this. And fortunately, he called me back a few weeks later and left word with the answering service. Leslie Brown, I just want to say thank you. And hung up. That was a good feeling. When we look out on our lives, you ask the question, what are you going to do? Look at, as you think about this that you know you need to handle, what are you going to do? And then write down 3 strong reasons on why you know you must take action. And be explicit and descriptive in your reasons, because your reasons have power. Your reasons will drive you. When you have doubt, when your faith becomes weak, your reasons will fortify your faith. When you have an inner conversation, say, no, don't do that. Your reasons will become your rod and your staff to comfort you, to take you through those challenging moments. So write down your reasons. And what you will find, that when you decide to act, when you decide to take life on, and let me warn you, it can be painful, it will be uncomfortable, and that's where the growth is. When you're uncomfortable, when you're stretching out, when you're taking life by the collar, you're going to get thrown to the ground again and again and again. But when you have determination, and you know that what you're doing is right, it gives you your life, it gives a special meaning and power to you, you will have some power from on high. You will discover some things about yourself that will begin to electrify your personality. You'll begin to discover some things about you that you don't know you've got when you put yourself in that type of challenging situation. Repeat after me, please. I can go into action on anything in my life. Nothing is stopping me but me. No challenge in my life has any power over me. Here's something that Howard Thurman wrote on the decision to act. He said, "It's a wondrous thing that a decision to act releases energy in the personality. For days on end, a person may drift along without much energy, having no particular sense of direction and having no will to change. Then something happens to alter the pattern. It may be something very simple and inconsequential in itself, but it stabs awake, it alarms, it disturbs. In a flash, one gets a vivid picture of oneself, and it passes. The result is decision, sharp, definitive decision. In the wake of the decision, yes, even as a part of the decision itself, energy is released. The act of decision sweeps all before it, and the life of the individual may be changed forever. When you decide to make decisions, to act, you begin to access power within you that will increase your self-esteem, that will increase and enhance your personal power, that puts you in charge of life. And life has a whole new meaning for you. There's a sense of personal freedom. Doesn't mean you're not going to have any struggles. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have any challenges. Doesn't mean that you're not going to suffer any defeats. No, it doesn't mean that. But what it does mean, that you're putting yourself in the position to grow. You're putting yourself in line with your higher calling and your higher self. And that's what life is about. Would you join me in this affirmation, please? Everybody stand, please. I'm standing up to life. And the challenges in my life. I'm going to use all of me. All of my courage, my faith, determination, and any help and support that I can give anyone to realize their greatness. Together we can. Shake somebody's hand on your right and left and say, "You got what it takes." Where's Mike?
This is the end of Side B. Please fast forward the tape to the end to cue up Side A for your next listening.